All right, hi everyone. I'm starting up my audio now. I'm not quite finished making my coffee, as you can see on the screen, but I was just gonna open up the audio and introduce you guys to the other people who are racing right now with me, or the other person who's racing right now with me, PraiseBigDog.
Hello.
And Uroogla, who's going to be doing some commentating on the race at the same time.
Hi, everyone.
So I'm going to get back to making my cup of coffee, but I was wondering if one of you guys want to explain to my stream exactly how the asymmetric race is going to work.
Sure. So what we have here are two racers running two different games. DebianChan is doing the original 1998 Spyro 1 game, 120%. So 14,000 treasure, 80 dragons, 12 dragon eggs, everything there is to do in the game. PraiseBigDog is going to be running the remake, any percent, specifically any percent no balloonist skip. So they're going to be running the same idea. You're going to see the same levels, but they're going to be doing it a bit differently. We're going to be able to talk about some of the differences between the two versions of the game. And based on things like skill level and load times, we expect this to be a relatively close race. And we can get more into that as we get underway.
Yeah, that sounds, like I said, that sounds much more knowledgeable than I am. I played Spyro as a kid, and now I'm playing Spyro Reginited as a much older kid. And one of the things that'll probably come up is the movement's a bit different. Actually quite a bit different. I'm realizing from having watched a good number of DebianChan streams and having actually played through the game once or twice more in preparation for this, as well as, goodness gracious, those load times.
Right. And so the challenge with those load times are in an official speed run in this category that you're running, load times would be removed. But we don't really have that luxury for a number of reasons. You are, if I understand correctly, running on Switch, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so that pretty much rules out the possibility of setting something up to remove those load times. So what we're going to be doing here is just real time. So the load times will count, and that's a lot of what makes this sort of a fair race, even though one side is doing 120% and the other is doing any percent, which is a little more than 50% when you think about what the requirements are to get to the end of the game. On the other hand, there is an in-game time that you can view after the run is over, and that's going to be interesting for the sake of comparison. We can see roughly how much time was lost in those loads. But just for the sake of fairness, keeping this interesting, we'll be using real time here.
So you guys can see on both our streams, I have splits open because I run this game, and George has one split that is the whole dang game. So he's just using his split as a nice timer there. Another reason why this race is a little bit more fair, as Rugo was saying, the load times are one reason, but I run this game, so that's why I'm doing a 120 race, and why PraiseBigDog there is doing a any percent race. So last time we did it, it was a little bit unbalanced, but Praise has been practicing. I've been practicing too, but Praise has been practicing, and and I think it should be a little bit more fair this time. We're gonna see how it ends up.
Yeah, I think one of my major, shortcomings last time was firstly not sort of knowing the game. I was playing blind, whereas this time I know at least 50% of the game, I'll say, as well as not knowing what those requirements were for the balloonists. And I think one thing I noticed, one thing that I'll hopefully do different this time, is that one of the balloonists at some point asks you for dragon eggs, and I had something like 7 or 8 when I think the requirement's only 5. So I'm not great at this game, but I know that I spend a good amount of time chasing around dragon egg thieves when, you know, that's a few minutes right there of just unnecessary sort of time wasting. But we'll see how it goes. I may just be overconfident. That's happened before.
Yeah.
But we're here to have fun anyway.
Absolutely. So I am all set up. It looks like you are too.
Yeah. Now remind me, it's the moment that I hit play here is when I should start timing, correct?
Yeah, since we're doing real time. Does that sound fair to you, Uroogla?
That's fine with me. If you're within 26.2 seconds, we can discuss it at the end. The start timing is different for the two categories, which makes this a little different / unfair. But let's go with that, and we'll play it by ear at the end if it's that close.
All right.
Sounds good to me.
So, how should we do this?
Shall I count you down?
Yeah, from 3 on go.
All right.
Sounds good. All right, 3, 2, 1, go.
All right.
And
We're off to a blazing start.
All right. And as we load in with skipping the opening cutscene on both sides, it's probably worth mentioning that the record for any percent reignited on the Switch versus the original 120% are within only a couple minutes of each other if you look at real time. And so this is really a fair category to race. It's not an official race by any means, but I'm excited to see just how close our runners can keep it.
Already, I'm doing something that I don't think DebianChan would have expected.
Whoa.
Yep.
Oh yeah,
Alright.
you skipped Nestor. Nice.
So yes, first we have a difference here. It's in the original game, that first dragon cutscene you cannot. So that's a good 20 seconds or so that you just lose. It is possible in the remake. It's very challenging. So in an any percent run, might as well just skip it if you can't do that trick. But we are now going into Sunny Flight for both runners. Sunny Flight is something that's not present in a lot of the any percent routes of this game. But if you're comfortable with the level, or if you've practiced it recently, it is 300 pretty quick gems.
That's exactly my goal here, is 300 quick gems.
Now, like I said, DebianChan is going to be trying to get everything. 14,000 gems, 80 dragons, 12 eggs. And the goal is to do this without having to backtrack, revisit levels. So DebianChan's going to have to get everything in here. If PraiseBigDog misses something or crashes, it's not going to be the end of the world to leave the level with 180 gems instead of 300.
Yep. I think one of my sort of strategy changes from last time was that there's pretty thin margins on what all I'm allowed to skip in order to get to the end world, in terms of like difficult levels or just things that are hard to reach. But if I get these gems from a couple of the flight levels, I might be able to build myself a bit of a cushion, or maybe not knowing the most efficient route or something like that.
Right. And so to get to the final world, and so to complete the game in any percent, you will need 6,000 gems. And at that point, there are 10,500. So there is some flexibility, but we can't go skipping everything willy-nilly. We actually see both of the runners finish the level at the same time.
Whoa. He really made up that time.
It was pretty disastrous on my planes, to be honest.
And with the pads as well. But one of the big differences here is that DebianChan was able to skip the final victory animation where Spyro spirals up into the air by crashing into something while collecting the final treasure chest in that case. And so that's a way that you can save time in the original version. All right, and now we're going to see a bit of a route divergence. We have Dark Hollow and Stone Hill at the same time. Dark Hollow tends not to be done in an any percent route. We may see it anyways just because it is one of the easier levels, but it's only 100 gems and 3 dragons with no eggs. And so for the targets that we're going to be aiming for to move on in the game for any percent, it's maybe not the best option. It is, of course, required in 120%. So we'll see if this is a place where PraiseBigDog can save some time or chooses to do it to save time later.
You should do it, Praise.
Well, I'm already in it, and my thinking, I'll say, is just that this is, well, I'm not the most skilled Spyro player, and I think if there's ways to get gems and dragons, even if it's not necessarily so much return on time, the fact that I'm flawed in sort of my play means that I also sort of want to take for myself difficulty into account.
And that is important. So you'll see DebianChan runs 120%, this is their 50th set of splits. So they've run it a good amount over the past couple months. But they're not going to be going for all of the tricks either. Things where if you fail, it costs a lot of time, for instance. I will say, though, that the level that you're on right now is one that's in the normal any percent route. Dark Hollow in the hedge maze is the one that's often skipped. So we'll see if you do end up doing that as well. That's probably going to come down to your personal preference.
Yeah.
And here on DebianChan's side, you can see the importance of movement and some of the challenges that come from trying to go fast in some of these levels. So stairs are difficult without perfect movement. It is possible to charge up them going somewhat diagonally, but if you don't do it perfectly, you crash into the stairs and fall down and lose some time. We also saw a couple attempts at wall glide, where you gain some height by gliding alongside a wall. That wasn't successful, but we'll see plenty of other opportunities where Debian is probably more comfortable.
Indeed, there is actually one where I need to get it in my route. So, and it's an easier one too. So I'll try to point that out as we get towards it.
All right, on to Toasty here in our 120% run. So Toasty is a level that does require you to have jumped through the finishing vortex at the end of a level before you can unlock it. Now, there are 120% strategies that involve doing this later on and in a different order, because you can make use of some glitches to sneak in the back from another part of the world. But DebianChan does do this third after Sunny Flight and Dark Hollow. This is one of the more interesting levels. We have enemies that require 2 hits to kill, these dogs. We also have, this is a boss world, though maybe not in the sense that you're used to. We'll be coming up to the boss Toasty very soon, who is a sheep on stilts, spoiler. And the boss levels in Spyro, with maybe one exception, really aren't what you'd think of as boss levels even from this era. Basically, they're just multi-hit enemies with a little bit of a gimmick. This is another level that we expect to see skipped in an any percent route, because there's 100 gems and only 1 dragon. And it does require going through an exit portal, which means that you have to change your route in one of the worlds to leave through there. We do see PraiseBigDog at one of those portals, but does take off to get some more gems. Very close to the 200 max for this level, 182, and heading into the well. That count looks good to me for full clearing this world.
Yep. Missed 5, it seems, but again, I get a little leeway here.
Yeah, that's definitely good enough. In a worst case scenario, if you find that you need to go back for gems, something that the original version doesn't have that the remake does is the ability to warp to worlds that you visited using the guidebook. The guidebook effectively tracks what you've done in each world and have left, and it's something that also allows for fast travel in the remake. there on DebianChan's side, we see a skip that isn't possible in the Reignited trilogy in Stonehill. You can jump up on that waterfall to gain height and get up to the second tier rather than having to take a whirlwind later in the level to glide out. This does make the routing a little bit nicer, so it's definitely a plus to be able to do that. On the other hand, we're going to be seeing Town Square pretty soon in the Reignited trilogy. Town Square is another one of these sort of teach you how the game works levels, 200 gems, 4 dragons. We do have a dragon egg, one of the blue thieves runs around. But for the most part, this is just learning how to glide to different places. The enemies don't pose too much of a threat. We'll talk a little more about the enemies as we get into them.
Fun fact, in the original series at least, there is only one glide in Town Square that's necessary to complete the level. Everything else can be done with charging or what's called glide buffering, which is gliding for just one frame, pressing the X button. There's only one that you actually need to glide to complete the level, even though it's meant to teach you about how to glide.
That's really interesting. I mean, I definitely, when I play this, both the original and the Reignited trilogy, I went with the intended strategies. I did all of the glides. So we're coming up now on these bulls here in Town Square. And these bulls are interesting because if you flame them, they'll just die. If you charge them, they'll give up their gems, so they'll die, but their corpses will be stuck with their horns in the ground. So that's kind of funny, entertaining. But their corpses still have hitboxes in that case. You can run into them, get in your way. In the original game, when enemies die, their hitboxes linger for a little bit, meaning that you can accidentally charge into them, your flame can get caught up in them, but not to enemies. Enemies can run through them perfectly fine. So that's one of the big differences here between the games. All right. So we're about to DebianChan finish off. Let's see if PraiseBigDog can catch this thief. This is the best time to get it. We do miss the flame there. Not that big a deal, not much of a time loss. We'll see if they go for it a second time or not. They only need 5, as they mentioned, of the 12 in this game. We are going to glide back over. We take that.
Where'd he go? Can I? Got him. Nice.
Good job. Oh, missed him.
Yes.
I did do that second. Oh man, I did do that second loop anyway, but I did get him second time anyway. So there's you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, I find that the thieves accelerate more quickly and react to you from further off in the Reignited trilogy. In some places like that, it does make it a bit harder to catch them. So it seems like at this level, myself included, it's a lot more common to catch the thief in that area rather than at the start, like we're going to see from DebianChan in just about a minute here as he enters Town Square.
Hopefully, we're going to see from DebianChan.
With some likelihood. There now. Oh, that's a fairy. Oop, and there you see a corpse that's stuck. You too.
Mm-hmm. And we didn't get a chance to mention this. So something that's possible in the Reignited trilogy, and you'll see it in the world record for any percent, is that the very first dragon in this area, it's possible to free the dragon and then stand in such a way that the fairy that spawns to save your progress will push you up, called a proxy, into the higher areas, and it allows for better routing, especially in any percent. It's a lot easier to just get the dragons that you're going for that way. It's not something you can do in the original, and in 120%, we have a pretty nice loop around the whole level as it is. All right, so our runners are pretty synced. again, it's a little bit different because PraiseBigDog doesn't need everything in all of the, doesn't need everything in each level, but we're going to see them probably leaving Artisans at about the same time. So Artisans is the first of the 6 worlds in this game. You do need to get to the 6th world and defeat the boss there in order to complete the game for any percent. There's some extra stuff you have to do in 120. To get out of each world has certain requirements, as we've alluded to. The requirement in that first world is 10 dragons. So for 120%, this isn't going to be an issue. You're getting everything. The balloonist requirements to get to the next world are not a concern. For any percent, generally you're going to try and cut the last couple pretty tight. So 40 dragons, 6,000 gems. We are going to see Dark Hollow here from PraiseBigDog. So we talked about this a bit earlier. It's 100 gems, 50 dragons, and it's a much easier level than some of the later ones. So from a world record perspective, it may be skipped, but at this level, it definitely makes sense to give it some consideration. We see DebianChan here talking to the balloonist. He has met the requirements and so is heading on to the second world, Peacekeepers. Each of these worlds has a bit of a theme going on, and they each have different requirements to get to the next one. These themes are a bit more pronounced in the Reignited version. You can see the graphics are very different. Each dragon has their own model themed after the premise of the world. So Peacekeepers, we expect to be battle themed. We can see that in the style of the enemies. All right, that's 11 dragons. So PraiseBigDog does have the requirements to move on to the next world when they so choose.
Yeah. Just building up a small buffer here. Some gems, some dragons.
And that buffer is good. The requirements for getting out of the first 2 worlds are pretty low. 10 dragons and then 1,200 gems. 1,200 that's roughly where PraiseBigDog is going to be leaving the first world. There are 1,000 available. They're getting almost everything. So building up a buffer is good, as the worlds do generally get more complicated and harder, even if there are more gems per level as we move forward. So there's 100 in this one, but we get on to the point where there are 500 in most of the levels later on in the game.
One thing to keep in mind, I think Uroogla has said this, but even if it looks like PBD is behind me, he doesn't have to do many of the levels in the final world if he plays his cards right. So he can build up a little bit of a buffer in gems and then just decide not to do some of the worlds that I have to do, in fact, a whole homeworld at the end, if he has the right gem count. So
That's
I'm
sort of the goal.
So I'm racing as hard as as fast as I can, although missing that, with that in mind.
That's going to be a bit of a time loss there. We'll have to go back. DebianChan missed a glide to a chest and ended up dropping at a place pretty inconvenient to get back there. It's something that's doable at the end of the level, or they may choose to do it now. We'll see how they route it in. But that's going to be some time that, because DebianChan is running 120%, they have to go back for those few gems. PraiseBigDog, if they miss a glide like that, they say, it's okay, I don't need those 10 gems.
Exactly.
All right, so it looks like we are going to skip Toasty, unless I missed it being done very quickly. That's perfectly fine. Toasty is not the most efficient level to do in any percent.
Yeah, we are doing Toasty skip, as it were.
Toasty skip. I like that. Is that a new glitch?
Well, I'm playing like it's a glitch.
That's also a really good gem count, given that we're skipping Toasty. That's 883 out of 900 possible gems.
Nice.
Again, that's not That doesn't have to be the goal in any percent, but if the goal is to build up a big amount of gems that we can just sort of skip the final world, which, if I remember correctly, you haven't really practiced, then that's probably a good call, and that's a good sign for our ability to do that.
My thoughts are that I'm not sure if I'm competent enough at these flight levels. I've sort of mentioned time and again on DebianChan's stream, sort of in chat, I'm not the best flight levels, so I figure that I may end up having to do a world or two anyway in the last homeworld there, but we'll see sort of if I'm aggressive enough with trying to get this buffer built up. Perhaps I can just squeak through with the start of one of these levels or some such.
I definitely think that's the case. We'll see as the levels get more complicated. Some of them it's going to be a bit more challenging if you haven't gotten much practice in, especially in the fourth world. DebianChan, so I know we're a little bit past this, but you just went by 2 of the firework chests. These are chests that you can flame and it'll start a countdown and then they'll blow up. So you went there and you flamed them, which is probably the normal strategy. Could you talk about what the alternative is and why you didn't go for it there?
Yeah. So you can also simply charge into them, and then they immediately explode rather than when you flame them. They have a little timer. If you charge into them, they immediately explode, and you take a hit of damage. We haven't talked about sparks, so maybe Uroogla wants to do that in a moment, but sorry, one more. Nope, missed the jump. I was already 1 low on my hit points, and I didn't want to risk that because I knew I would have to backtrack. So I was just playing it a little bit conservatively there.
Right, so this is a good time to talk about Sparks. That's the dragonfly that follows you, both of these versions. Sparks serves a couple of really important functions. First, it signals your health. So Sparks has different colors. Gold means that you're at full health. Blue means you've taken 1 hit of damage. Green means 2. And after that, Sparks goes away, and 1 more hit will kill Spyro. The other is that Sparks will go around and pick up gems that are not directly in Spyro's path. So we've been seeing this without really commenting on it, but while Sparks is alive, that gives you an increased gem pickup range that's really important for both of these runners. Without Sparks, you have to be much more precise in Spyro's movement to actually land on top of the gems to pick them up. So keeping Sparks is going to speed you up. In other words, playing poorly slows you down beyond the initial damage. So it's often a trade-off for taking damage on those fireworks chests, where it gets you the gems faster, but you take a point of damage. So depending on how confident you are, how much health you have at the moment, that'll determine what exactly your strategy is there. There are some differences in how Sparks picks up gems in the 2 versions of the game. Sparks is generally a little kinder in the Reignited trilogy, able to pick up gems when you're in the air or not on the same level plane as the gem. We may see some here with the vultures here in the original Cliff Town. If a gem lands on the pillar, Spyro generally has to jump up onto the pillar to get the gem, and that can be a bit of a time loss. In Reignited, Sparks is a lot nicer, but Sparks can get caught in the geometry or miss gems that you'd expect Sparks to pick up, so it's kind of a trade-off. And we can see both of our runners here in Peacekeepers. This level here, Dry Canyon, which DebianChan finished about 2 minutes ago or so, is a good example of how the enemies behave differently in the 2 different games. So we can see both vultures here jumping out at PraiseBigDog from a greater distance than they did in the original. In the original, it was possible to jump on a lot of those vultures. Oh, that's a rough death there from PraiseBigDog. There is a dragon nearby, but the general route is to pick it up after that area. It's not going to be too bad, but that is, especially with the reload time on a death, going to cost some time. But yes, we can see those vultures are reacting from much further out and both charging, where in the original game, DebianChan was able to sneak up on some of them. Just so this remaster is the same game, everything's in the same location, but it plays differently. Some ways are more easy to see than others, and that's because the makers, Toys for Bob, did not have access to the code from the original 1998 game. They built out their own system where they could recreate the levels as faithfully as possible, but they're not just polishing up the code and making the worlds look better. And so some of these are easier to see than others. Back in the Artisan's Homeworld, that first area we were in, if you charge at the basic enemies in the original game, they'll cower until you stop charging. They just won't move. In the Reignited trilogy, they're still going to run away.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah, you can't actually get them to freeze in place.
That makes so much sense as to why I had so much more difficulty. I was like, I don't remember chasing these guys around this much in the original.
Exactly. So that's one of the differences. A lot of these enemies that you have to charge, so enemies with armor are immune to your flame, and they have to be killed by a charge attack. They generally react a bit faster to you, and so if your charge is a little bit off center and you miss, they're going to make you pay for it and hit you a lot faster than they would in the original game. This maybe comes through a little more in some of the later games in the trilogy, but we do see it from time to time in the original. Meanwhile, DebianChan here is in Dr. Shemp, the second boss level. This is arguably more of a boss than Toasty was, but it's the same premise. You hit the boss 3 times, they die. The boss has a little bit of a gimmick, but they're not going to pose much of a threat, except apparently knocking you off the platform.
Yeah. I've tried to...
Death, but...
as you were saying before, Sparks is not kind in this game, and I was trying to play it a little bit close and try to catch that gem with Sparks. And I was hoping actually to be pushed off, because then it's a little faster, because you don't have control over Spyro during that cutscene, but I was not close enough to pull that off.
Also, welcome on in Moo654321.
Yeah, hi.
I don't know if PraiseBigDog has chat open.
I do, but I am using 3 screens, and the furthest to the right is the only one where I'd be able to see, whereas the game is on the furthest to the left. So it's I am just seeing that about 30 seconds before you mentioned it. But hello, hi. We're racing. We're doing an asymmetrical Spyro race, of all things.
And so we're kind of showcasing the 2 different versions, the original 1998 game and the recent Reignited trilogy. To keep things fair, because of things like load times and skill differences, we have DebianChan running 120%, that's get everything in the game, and we have PraiseBigDog running any percent, so beat the final boss, which requires a little more than 50% of the stuff in the game.
Hey Uroogla, why is it 120% rather than 100%?
So you see, Insomniac and PlayStation games really like to do weird things with percentages. The idea is that there's a bonus level at the end of the game that you, DebianChan, are going to have to do to complete your category.
I am?
With, well, hopefully, with 2,000
It's troubling that you didn't know that.
And so everything that you need to do up to that point is called 100%. So 12,000 gems, 80 dragons, and 12 dragon eggs, plus kill all the bosses. But you need to do that to get all the gems. There are then 2,000 extra gems in that bonus level. Any percent isn't going to require that, but those extra gems count on towards what your guidebook shows as your world completion, and that can get up to 120% if you get all 14,000 gems.
Oh, I did not know that.
Well, you do occasionally leave with 1990 gems, so that's fair.
That's true. Type bang mistake in my chat. You'll see all mistakes are intentional.
To heighten the dramatic tension of the run through.
Exactly.
Exactly. And all mistakes I make in commentating are completely accidental. Because I know exactly what I'm doing, I just can't. Here we see Cliff Town, which is one of the more complicated routing levels. Because there's a lot of glides, the level isn't completely linear, and some of it will depend on, in the original game, there are some tricks that you can do to get to areas earlier than you intended. There's still some of that in the Reignited trilogy, just not nearly as much. We did see PraiseBigDog trying to glide around a bit for different places that are maybe not intended to be reached at that point. It is possible. But again, in any percent, we don't necessarily need every last gem. It's not the end of the world to have to come back to them. Or to just skip them entirely.
Exactly. I think there's a jump that I've seen DebianChan sort of over time get better and better at doing that jump, and I was really hoping that the difference in movement here would make that easier for me, but I was taking a while doing it, and I figured, you know what, let's not lose because of hubris. Not this time.
Yeah, the movement in the two games is surprisingly different. Again, kind of going back to the fact that Toys for Bob, in making the remake, did not have access to the original code. And so I generally find that in the remake, you can jump a little bit higher. But if you're just doing a normal glide, that is jump twice to glide and don't be afraid, you will find that you don't go as far or don't end up gliding as high, which makes things a bit challenging. But that trade-off means that there are places you can go with a simple jump that you wouldn't be able to go without some more advanced movement technique in the original. And by contrast, you probably have to use some more advanced movement technique just to make regular glides that are intended. For example, gliding over that big chasm up to this higher area that we saw a couple minutes ago, it's generally easier to do that if you're charging when you glide, rather than just start from a stationary standpoint. On DebianChan's side, we do see Ice Cavern. Ice Cavern is another one of the really interesting levels in this game for a bunch of reasons. First, we have what was just killed, one of these giant enemies in armor. So the rule of thumb is that enemies in armor cannot be flamed. But large enemies cannot be killed by charging them. Spyro is just not big enough. So there is a hint from a dragon. We're not going to hear that hint because we are skipping all of those audio bits. But the idea is that the ice in this cave makes their feet very slippery, so although charging them won't kill them, it does knock them back. You can knock them into the chasm, and they'll give you gems. This is another difference here between the Reignited trilogy and the original. Reignited is much better about giving you gems from enemies that go spiraling off into the void. The gems will home on you if an enemy falls off the screen and dies. By contrast, DebianChan has to jump to get the gem quickly because it'll just stay stationary instead of tracking to where Spyro is. So that's a bit of a time save. It's convenient, but all in all, it's not going to make too much of a difference here.
That's odd. This guy won't. Okay, well, none of my business, I guess.
Oh, that's an interesting glitch. I wonder if it has to do with the cannon. So we on PraiseBigDog's side, we do see a Nork that's an enemy who just won't die, seems to be immune, except for mooning us, which is
Yeah.
what the enemies do in this area. Uh, I wonder if it has to do with the cannon hitting the tent that they were in. They should be fine to kill when we leave this level and the enemies respawn. I don't know if it would be worth the time, but that'll be
Probably not. That guy just ate. He had his gummy vitamins this morning, and he found that nothing really could hurt him.
Wish I
So
could.
what did he choose to do with that? To hurt me emotionally.
All right, DebianChan is about to finish up Ice Cavern. A circuitous route. This is very close to where you start the level, actually, that we're finishing. But we will be grabbing gems here in this key chest. So there are a few chests in the game that require a key to open from that same level. You do keep the key if you die, which helps a bit, but if you game over, if you run out of lives, you do lose it and have to collect it again. Those chests can be destroyed in other ways, not your normal charge or flame, but we are going to see a couple of those different ways, at least on DebianChan's side, later in the run. And if that happens, the key just sort of disappears as if it never existed.
Well, at least in the original, I think the key still exists.
I believe it goes so in well, we'll see this a bit later, but in in Nasty's world,
Yeah.
there is a key in one area and there's chest in another, but you can kill that, you can destroy that chest without the key, depending on which order you do those rooms in. And I believe the key does actually disappear if you do that second.
Okay. I'll take your word for it. Or we can test it here on stream.
Up to you. It is probably a little bit of a time loss based on what you
I think we should test it. It sounds like we should test it.
All right. That sounds good. I'm also curious if it's different in the two versions.
Hey, come on, guy. Please. There it is.
Yeah, we didn't get it. Okay, we'll get him on the way up. That guy gives me grief each time.
Got him.
Yes, DebianChan is showing off one of the features of those spinny chests. You have to flame them 3 times to destroy them and get the gem inside. It's normally a gem worth a lot, so those yellow gems that are worth 10 often hide in there. But there's an extra feature where the shrapnel from that will fire off, tends to home in on enemies. And it's possible to kill a couple of the wizards there using the shrapnel when perhaps you're intended to kill them in a different way.
I wasn't aware of that. That's cool.
It's a little bit different in the Reignited trilogy, to be fair. They do still the shrapnel can still kill enemies, but it doesn't home quite as well, I believe.
Yeah, that's my experience. You probably won't have seen it, but I've actually done that twice. But both of the times I've done it, the enemy has been off screen. So when I tried to do that playing the Reignited, just was not possible. Really, you have to be very, very precise if it's even possible.
That's my experience too. We did see that, well, or not see that in Clifftown. If you've been watching very carefully, you may have noticed a random purple gem, which is worth 25, just sitting on the ground by a vulture. And that is the result of the shrapnel being used to kill one of the larger enemies, just off screen.
Oh boy, decisions. All right, we'll try it.
All right, we're doing a flight level.
Now, see, these I don't love, so I have not practiced any of them. So this is the blind section of the game for me. But at most, we use up a couple minutes, and we get 100 or so gems. Being generous to myself.
Mm-hmm. Right. We are seeing some deaths here from DebianChan. This is cycle based. That wizard will raise and lower the wall. There are ways to sort of get through even when it's up high. The intended strategy is to time it that you're jumping when it's down low. We do get through on the third try. That's going to be a bit of time lost. Not to put too much pressure on you, PraiseBigDog, but going into this level, DebianChan was 43 seconds ahead of personal best pace.
Oh my goodness. Well, you know, PB time is sort of either PraiseBigDog or personal best. There's gonna be a PB coming out of this of some description, so.
That's true.
That's completely fair. Let's see which one it is, though.
Could be both. That'd be nice. All right, now what is the last? Yes, of course, these guys.
I want this light.
PraiseBigDog's gem count is looking pretty good right now. Going into this level, they were just short of 2,100, still in Peacekeepers.
No, didn't mean to retry that.
That'll cost a few seconds, but it is 180 gems. That's perfectly fine. There are 300 possible gems in each of these flight levels. You get an extra 60 for completion of everything in one go. So 240 from the different components, and then 60 for everything in one try. 180 is perfectly good for that amount of time, especially given the difficulty of some of these later levels. So I believe we are expecting to see, I don't know if we'll see Ice Cavern or not. There are a lot of gems there, but it is one of the more technical levels in terms of skill. DebianChan is making some progress into Magic Crafters. Again, if you missed this, even though they're in different worlds, DebianChan looks ahead. It's a lot closer than it seems because in 120% you've got to do everything. PraiseBigDog is setting up to skip a lot of levels towards the end.
And there's my, there's a death.
And that is a mood. I have died there last week myself. That's supposed to be a really simple, straightforward glide in the original game.
That's exactly what I was thinking as you mentioned sort of the places where you might need a little bit more of an advanced movement in the remake, whereas in the original it's very straightforward. That is exactly the jump that came to mind for me.
And here we can see something about the respawn system, which plays a role. I mean, it definitely plays a role in terms of intended speedrun strats, but also if you have unintentional deaths. So when you first enter a level, if you die, you'll respawn at the start of a level. If you free a dragon or step on one of the dragon portals, or in the Reignite trilogy, if the fairy there zaps you, then what will happen is that serves as your new respawn point. So by dying without having stepped on one of those since re-entering the homeworld, PraiseBigDog ended up back at the start of the world instead of at the dragon that was right nearby. So that ended up being a time loss. It is possible in different places to take advantage of that system and do what's called a death warp. So effectively you die intentionally to get to a different part of the world faster. And we're going to see that towards the end of the 120% route, not so much in the any percent route. Here in High Caves, we have another of those sets of enemies that are both large and covered in armor. We're going to see a new approach for killing them here. I think we're actually going to see two. And we've already passed by one of the tools that we're going to use for that. We saw a ramp with some arrows on it, and that's called a supercharge, and it makes you both go faster, and it makes it so that you can charge those otherwise invisible enemies. It can be a little bit harder to control because you're going faster, but it is really useful, and we're going to see it in a few levels throughout this game. Completely required to complete the game 120%. and it leads to some great gems for the any percent route as well. On the other hand, we're about to see the other way that's intended to kill spiders. I know my feed is a few seconds behind, but we see this fairy kissing Spyro. Spyro's going to turn red in the original game. Well, it looks like we're going to be doing a different strat here.
Apparently.
So this
Apparently.
supercharges Spyro's flame, and Spyro's flame is enough to kill these armored enemies during that limited power-up period. I believe that's actually, well, I believe 120 like world record runs will do that route, but not with the super flame. They'll do it with the supercharge, which requires really precise movement to
Whoa.
get up these steps.
Yeah, even just hearing that, that's incredible.
And it looks really cool, but it involves like charging along the wall to gain extra height so that you don't crash on the stairs. And it is definitely something that takes a lot of practice to get down, so we're not going to see it here. But those spiders, which I will say as a kid terrified me because they just charge at you and bite you with no obvious way to kill them. There are two different ways that you can kill them, and we've seen both of them now. Meanwhile, Ice Cavern, which we talked a little bit about when DebianChan was doing it, this level has a bunch of different loops in it, which means that there are a variety of ways to proceed throughout it. We're already at the exit for the level, but we've explored almost none of it. So these sort of steps, if you will, with the gems on them, lead you in one possible direction. There are several other ways to go throughout this level. This is generally the speedrun route, though I think it does depend on what exactly your goal is. On 120, you'll be doing this, but skipping some areas without gems by using more glide techniques. 227 gems already in this level, picking up some more there for PraiseBigDog. We're going to have a nice buffer heading into the next couple worlds. The next check on gems after the 1200 required to get out of the second world is to get to the final world where you need 6,000, so plenty of time to pick those up. The next goals that we're going to have to leave the third world are 5 dragon eggs, and so I think neither runner expects to have any issues with that requirement, and 40 dragons to leave the fourth. So we're making good progress on both of those goals, so we expect to see PraiseBigDog focusing pretty heavily on gems for the rest of the run.
Exactly right. Oh man, nearly got.
All right, another level complete from Debianchan. That is a rough high caves. Shooting off in the wrong direction will cost some time. Still a good pace though. This is very close to their personal best, with a lot of possible time to make up later on. So here's another one of those supercharges. So we move faster. We can destroy these otherwise unbreakable chests. We see a cool little loop there when we miss a couple enemies, but those supercharges are going to come in handy throughout the rest of the game.
Including in this level I'm entering here.
Wizard Peak is one of those that has a lot of just technical places where you can speed up the run, even in 120%, so you don't lose gems to do so. Here we see this sort of semi-hidden area where there are a large number of gems. That's going to lead to an area that is visible towards the start of the level, but this is the way that you get to it. But we're going to see a second of those areas that could be gotten by doing the same thing, achieved in a very different way here from DebianChan. Meanwhile, PraiseBigDog is about to finish off Ice Cavern. There's the chest with the key in it. That's 400 out of 400 gems done, and we're off, and I think we're going to be heading to Magic Crafters.
I think so.
So a couple levels behind at this point, but again, when you need only 50% of the stuff in the game, that makes it a lot closer. So this is definitely anyone's game, and I think that'll become clear when we enter Homeworld 5.
Yeah, there's it's worth mentioning it's not a 50% difference, but a 70% difference in terms of things that need to be collected here, which roughly matches the 70% difference in skill
and load times
as well.
All right, so we can DebianChan going for a trick here. We're doing something that's definitely unintended. We're riding this supercharge a little bit of the way down. We're turning around, and we're trying to use that extra speed by riding along a wall to jump up to this enemy that's visible. The intended strategy has you go back along that extra path at the very beginning, most of the way, and make a blind jump where you can't actually see where you're going to get to the back of this area. DebianChan having a little bit of trouble with this. It is definitely not an easy trick. There we go. Just pulling it off there. Got just enough height. And so that saves a lot of backtracking. Even if you need a number of attempts to get it, it's still a time save.
And I'll just comment on my own run really quickly that at the start of this world, there's a dragon, there's an egg thief that I sort of had that in mind from the start of the game. I knew that I only really needed 4 because that guy's right in front of you at the start of the level. So it's kind of a gimme as far as like any percent goes. If I only need 5 and one of them's right in front of me, just gonna make sure I account for that by only grabbing 4. So now I'm free to ignore all egg nappers.
I personally was unable to get that in my first reignited playthrough. It was too fast for me because I fell in the water and it took off.
Yeah, goodness. If you don't get it the first time through, like as soon as you enter into the world, it's much, much harder. Or at least that's been my experience. So now that I have him permanently in my mind and I'm ready to start charging and sort of flame around the corner as soon as possible, it's worlds easier.
Definitely. On DebianChan's side, we're seeing some of the difficulties of Third Peak. A lot of gliding, a lot of supercharged gliding, which makes you go higher and farther. A lot of these secret areas behind the walls, we saw a thief, and we actually saw one of those death warps. It is possible to get back to where DebianChan had been before killing the thief, but it's a lot faster to just take the death and go back to the dragon, which puts you exactly where you want to be. Go down that supercharge a second time. So DebianChan is up to 43 dragons now. They're not halfway through the game despite that, but we're getting there. The number of dragons in the final world is much smaller. Partly, I would imagine, to make it more difficult since they do act as checkpoints. But also it is thematically appropriate for the final world as a desolate area.
Do we want to, speaking of desolate area, do we want to mention Dorito at all? Is that something worth mentioning as far as the final area goes?
Dorito, yeah, so, exact wrong time for me to speak.
Oh no.
So, if you watch the any percent in the original here, the new world record held by DeoMan uses a technique called rat proxy, where you something that actually I don't use really that much in my run. I don't think at all, and isn't used in most of these original Spyro runs here, more so in 2 and 3, is something called a proxy, which is where you get lodged in an enemy's hitbox and use it and you get shot out of it with a lot of momentum. And so there's a technique called rat proxy where you get lodged in a rat's hitbox, the rat affectionately called Dorito, and you're able to skip 2 of the 3 worlds in that home world, which is a big time save. So if you can get it, it's really good. Unfortunately, it depends a lot on the behavior of the rat, which is one of the very few places in this game where there is RNG.
Yeah, so you can often see in those original runs just sort of waiting for the rat to line up in the right place. And it still saves you a bunch of time. You can skip 2 entire levels by doing that, so it's still worth waiting for. But if you're going for a world record or a personal best, that's going to be really frustrating. The Reignited Trilogy Any Percent run has a different way of skipping those 2 levels. I must admit, I don't fully understand how it works. You free a dragon and get caught in a bunch of different things, talking to a fairy in look mode, and you go talk to the balloonist to transport you to the last world while still maintaining control. And you can jump into the portal for the final boss before anything that prevents you from going there will spawn in. It's something along those lines. We will certainly not be seeing that here, but
Not even close.
the world record for any percent reignited in this category where no balloonist skip, so no skipping the majority of the game, basically, does make use of that to skip 2 levels in the final world. DebianChan here on to Blowhard, which is the boss of the world. Again, not really much of a boss, can't do a whole lot to you other than kind of annoy you by jumping up so it can't be flamed.
Sort of a great foil to speedrunning, though, because if he does hit you, their animation is like a little bit copious as far as the Spyro damage animations go.
That's true.
You sort of stand there and you're lifted by am I right? He lifts you with a little whirlwind and such.
In a different world, that's the case. In this one, you get shot with like an electrical bolt, and it is quite a long damage animation, but.
Yeah, so each of the enemies will have a different damage animation, and some of them are much longer than others. So there are a few enemies in Worlds 4 and 5 where they'll just eat you, chew you, spit you out, and you lose a lot of time compared to not being hit a normal way. Oh, that's a rough death. I guess it's not too bad. It's right by the dragon. But those moving platforms, it's possible to go through them a lot faster, but you run into risks like taking deaths there. And you don't get infinite lives in this game. Depending on what exactly you're doing, especially at higher levels of competition, runners will watch their life count very carefully because they're trying to game over near the end of the game for a skip that we'll talk about in another hour or so. But generally, you plan on a certain number of deaths for death warps throughout the game, and extra ones are a little bit of a problem. It's not going to be as big a deal here. Mostly, it's just getting back to the point where you died, unless you game over. If you run out of lives, it kicks you out of the level and boots you to the start of the world, including a longer animation with a game over screen. That we really want to avoid. Now, here's another difference between the Reignited trilogy and the original. In the original, you flame these sheep or frogs or mushrooms. They're called fodder, and they'll give a butterfly. They can be used to heal up sparks by 1 level. So if your sparks is gone, you get rid of them, and we actually see this on DebianChan's screen. Blue sparks turns yellow, green will turn blue, and no sparks will turn green. In the Reignited trilogy, based on how it worked in the second and third original games, every 10 of those gives you a special blue butterfly that will restore your health to full and give you an extra life.
I was not aware it was every 10. Goodness.
It is every 10. And the Reignited trilogy has skill points for various actions. Some of them are a lot easier than others. There's a simple glide, well, not simple because it's a lot harder in the Reignited trilogy than the original, but a glide that most players are probably going to be making anyways. There are gems in the first world, gives you a skill point, and skill points give you a bonus life. So we don't really expect to see a game over on PraiseBigDog side either. But deaths are a lot more costly in the Reignited trilogy, especially on Switch. They take a lot more time for the level to respawn. One thing about this fodder, the butterflies, is that while Sparks is chasing a butterfly, Sparks is not helping you collect gems. And so it's kind of a trade-off, health management versus the convenience, especially when you expect Sparks to be there for you to pick up gems and you go past them. It can be an annoyance, especially in 120%. So the question is, do I flame this chicken in this case when I have blue Sparks, or do I need Sparks to pick up gems for me right now?
Yeah, it's definitely something worth mentioning that those kinds of trade-offs, and even just thinking about that sort of stuff, is it's not automatic. In fact, you'll see oftentimes I am accidentally hitting fodder while attempting to grab chests or some such, and then have to resort to, like some kind of peasant actually grabbing my own gems. And it does cost me, especially sort of not having the most precise of movement, it does cost me some time to do all that.
Definitely. Now, on DebianChan's side, we just saw a really important trick for this level, Terrace Village, the first of the fourth world. Do you want to talk about what you just did?
Yes, in just a moment. There we go. So I did something called a wall glide, which I had attempted earlier in Dark Hollow. It's a technique where, so most of the walls in this world are sloped, and you can usually, when you glide into them, Spyro just bonks. He has this animation where he loses his momentum and he falls to the ground. But on each of these walls that is slightly angled like this, you can actually glide into it at very specific angles and gain height. So usually you can't make that jump, although I think you can in the Reignited remake.
Can in Reignited.
But in the original here, you're not meant to make that glide. And so by using that wall glide, I was able to make a sequence break. I was able to there we go. I was able to, sorry, best commentary. I was able to change the routing I use in this level to something that doesn't involve any backtracking. If I had done it the casual way, I would have had to backtrack through most of the level from the point that I am right here, which you'll see in just a few seconds. And the route is a lot slower. So by doing that wall glide, I'm able to shave maybe a minute off this level. A very large time save.
Yeah, that's a big deal. It's another one of those where you took a couple deaths and you still save time because it's right next to a dragon. You don't have to redo too much if you fail it and fall into the water. So we can see that we're still saving 33 seconds over your PB on that, despite the 2 deaths. And probably worth mentioning, we haven't brought it up, we do have a pair of gold splits at the end of Magic Crafters here.
One of them was a mistake. I accidentally cleared a previous split. So you'll see in the split that I did Blowhard in a second. Yeah, so you can talk about gold splits, go ahead, but that one wasn't such a split.
That's fair. Well, a gold split is the color that's used by default here on these trackers to show that it is the best time that the runner has ever achieved on that. They're called splits. Realistically, for this game, that's levels. or maybe getting from the last level in a world to the start of the next one. All right, we have Wild Flight here in the original game, and we have, again, this supercharge with the weird spiders in PraiseBigDog's.
Oh, whoa, what's happening? Look at this. So slow,
Not all
but
three.
yeah.
Yeah, we did get caught in spider webs. But yeah, I don't think that's it. We did lose momentum for some reason, but successfully got the 3 spiders there. So that's definitely good.
Yeah, I'm quite glad you called attention over to me right as I did something good like that.
Well, that is my job.
Thank you.
All right. Yes, I didn't mention it before because we don't really see it in the 120% speedrun, but in this level here, we are in a lot of areas. If we fall into the void, we don't die. We have fairies that save us. So this level is really showing us, hey, fairies are there to help you. We see that in a few places throughout the game. For instance, the fairy kiss that gives you fire breath. In the Reignited trilogy, fairies will save your progress. In a couple of the flight levels, the fairies will hold signs with arrows pointing you in the direction of sort of the intended route as well.
And if you happen not to be speedrunning or be like incredibly far ahead, the fairies allow you to talk to dragons again.
Mm-hmm.
I can illustrate that.
Yeah, please do. Feel free.
Yeah, we are moving on to the Misty Bog. And Misty Bog is a bad level. I mean, it's an interesting level. From a speedrun perspective, Misty Bog is a bad level.
From a casual perspective, it's a very hard level.
Yes. So these
goodness.
blue little jumpy enemies that we're seeing are probably 90% of the reason for that. They move around, I want to say, at random.
Yeah, you can control the cycles a little bit, but
Yeah, as we just see there, they attack very quickly and suddenly with their tongues at a greater range than you'd expect. And so it's very easy to take a lot of damage, and we're going to room in about 2 to 3 minutes with a ton of them in an enclosed space.
My goodness, is that the one with is that the room with the guys, the metal covered enemies,
Yep.
as well as the 100 or so frogs?
That's the one.
Oh goodness.
That's a room that you probably will be skipping, I would imagine.
Yes.
Both because you'll be probably done on gem count at that point,
I hope
and
so.
because it's just awful. The other enemies in this, this is an area with 4 different types of enemies. That's a lot for these levels. But those trees, or I want to say they're trees with the giant mouths that shake and then charge at you, if you get hit by them, it's a big time loss because they're one of the enemies that will chew you up and spit you out over like a 5 to 10 second period. We also see some sparksless action here. DebianChan will smartly just take the death instead of dealing with it right next to a dragon, so no real time loss, and gets a full sparks back, and picks up a life from the enemy just to make up for it. But yes, so because DebianChan had lost sparks, picking up gems was a lot harder. Spyro had to walk directly over them instead of just needing to go in their general vicinity. So that does slow you down. There's a category where you just do that for the entire run. It's called Sparksless. It's very impressive, but that's not what we're here for today. So we're going to try and
loving masochists out there.
We're going to rely on sparks as much as we can. All right. So let's see. We have Wizard Peak here on PraiseBigDog's side. 39 dragons, only 1 left, and then we're just done. And the gem count's looking pretty good too. We're about to hit 4,000, I think. Still in Magic Crafters.
Good job.
So it is very possible that we skip the entirety of the 5th world. I think that means so if I had to say, I would say that DebianChan is a little bit ahead right now still. but it's not by much.
A waste of time hitting that guy, but he was in my way.
And there are some nice gems back there, so even though we pick up a 6th unneeded egg, we also get something like 20 different gems. PraiseBigDog is going to fly over to the rest of the world from there. DebianChan, we saw, took a death to get back to the dragon. In any percent, I think this is a reasonable call as well, because we don't really need all of the gems in this world at this point.
Did I get up there yet? I did not.
Nice.
Oh,
Going
wait,
into
no, I did.
Guanton with full sparks.
Good luck.
All right, it's time for the room.
Speedrunners call this Guantanamo Bay. That's how bad it is.
There's not. Oh, no, there is. Nice. You're going to start to hear me begin mumbling to myself at different parts as we get further and further into the game. I'm less and less familiar where everything is. You just sort of hear a lot of rhetorical, but feel free to give me the answer, questions about, are there gems here? Where am I going? What's going on?
And we see DebianChan does make it out without sparks. That's going to slow things down a little bit here. There is some fodder, store health pretty soon after leaving level, but definitely better than taking a death, even if picking up some of these gems at the end are going to be a little bit harder without sparks. Right, there we go. 500 out of 500. Still a time save on this level.
Gold.
Oh, wow. A gold.
Wow, you're really bringing the heat today, but I tell you what, as long as I finish, my entire run is gold.
That's correct. That is one of the joys of having a single split for the entire game.
And doing it the first time as well.
Yep. First time you do it, it's a personal best no matter what.
As long as you finish.
Exactly.
All right.
Well
so
over 4,000.
We're probably close to the end of Magic Crafters here at 4257 gems. We do have the boss. That's a good one to do. Lots of gems in a pretty short amount of time. Not too much danger. On the other hand, we see treetops here on side.
Oh goodness,
Treetops.
there's a skip on treetops which just absolutely blows my mind every time. I believe DebianChan knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
There are two that I can think of that are really crazy. DebianChan, I think, goes for both of them, and is consistent on one and maybe not as consistent on the other.
There is an even crazier one that I don't go for that the world record does. It doesn't save all that much time compared to what I do. It's, I don't know, something like 3 or 4 seconds. I do mine because it's a little bit more consistent and a little bit less precise with the inputs.
Oh, here it comes, I think.
In one more supercharge.
So the premise of this is that there are a bunch of ramps and supercharges throughout the world, and at the very start of the level you see a green thief, and you're supposed to follow its path throughout the world, going down these ramps and supercharges to get up to what's supposed to be otherwise unreachable pillars off in the distance.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh, that's rough.
That's bad.
So these big armored chests here are intended to be destroyed while you have the supercharge. If you miss, you either have to lose a bunch of time going back to the supercharge or take a death to just go back to the dragon right before the supercharge. DebianChan has struggled a bit with this early on. Seems to have picked up sort of a different approach to the charge and glide to make it easier to get, but did miss it the first time, picked it up the second. Everything okay on your side, PraiseBigDog?
Oh, whoops, we've got, I'll just have to pause this here. Something up with the capture card.
Would you like me to pause as well?
It's fine, it shouldn't, there we are.
Okay.
There you go. It's a fairly quick fix. If it's cooperative,
Yep,
sometimes
there we
it
go.
takes a number of tries.
Yep, that worked on my end.
Fantastic. Look at that. I did a flight level.
Congratulations. So what we did see from DebianChan there is instead of taking like 4 or 5 supercharges throughout the entire level, uh, we instead took one supercharge and cheated, basically. We made a really sharp turn to an area that wasn't intended, and basically were able to gain enough height in order to just skip most of the intended route and get out there to a dragon, a bunch of gems. And now we see there's supposed to be a second one of these thieves, a red one, that takes a different path throughout the level, and we just snuck up behind him and flamed him before it even mattered. I mean,
That sharp turn, by the way, that's the skip that I was talking about. That just blows my mind every time, because as a kid playing this game, I had no idea about any kind of like sequence breaks or anything like that, and that is a pretty tough. The intended route there is pretty unforgiving. So the first time I saw DebianChan do that sequence break, I was just astounded.
so close on the second, getting to where the red thief would have been. Again, you're intended to take multiple supercharges. Believe this route that we're going on is the intended one. It is possible to do a couple different things to only take one supercharge. For instance, the one that you're riding, you can turn around on and then ride, like jump and ride again, so it counts as a second supercharge. Or you can do what DebianChan tried to do and sort of ride the terrain of the tree to give you just enough height that one supercharge will bring you up to that area. It's not too much time to take a death there, but it does lose a little bit of time over their PB.
With those reds. There we go.
All right, we're going to have dueling bosses here, Blowhard and Metalhead.
Oh my goodness.
So Metalhead is what I would consider the only real boss of this game, the only thing that remotely resembles what you'd think of as a video game boss.
I would strongly agree.
An interesting strategy to beat it, multiple phases, so to speak, throws enemies at you, throws electricity at you. I would say that this is the most exciting and like bossy boss of the game. That's a little bit rough. It's not the end of the world. Falling off that, we'll have to go back and get the 5 gem. But it's also one of the longer levels. There's this secret area over here that if you're a casual player, you may not have known about. And there's a lot of important stuff over here, some gems and a key to a chest later in the level. Meanwhile, Blowhard, which we've seen before here, these moving platforms with the wizards controlling them, it makes it a little bit cycle-based or harder to go through. We've got this dragon that's a useful checkpoint, even though we don't need any more. And it's just going to be some really quick gems, making really good progress towards our ultimate goal of skipping the 5th world entirely. And the 5th world is hard.
Oh my goodness, it is. I feel like between maybe the 3rd and 4th, there's a bit of a difficulty jump, but the 5th one is just punishing.
Definitely. And we're gonna see DebianChan have to go through all of that. There are some really cool tricks to skip parts of it again, but or to go through it in unintended ways faster. But that 5th world is, I would say, the slowest of all of them. Not that the 4th is fast either, but
All right.
Alright.
We're getting pretty close with this gem count, huh?
that's 5,060 leaving Magic Crafters.
Oh, wow.
You're going to be able to skip a lot of Beastmasters too.
Peacemakers, yeah.
Sorry, yes, Beastmakers. The 4th world. So this is going to be very close, and I think DebianChan has to start hurrying.
This, I will say, this race is now actually a race, which was kind of the conceit in the beginning when DebianChan and I were first sort of talking about it. Again, knowing the levels a little bit better, knowing what the requirements are, And being more acquainted with the movement really making the difference for me here, whereas DebianChan just is good, you know.
You wouldn't know it by the this run. I am surprised.
Go ahead.
I am surprised at just how good the splits are compared to my PB. Ah, there we go.
That's a rough hit. So DebianChan is now sparksless for the rest of this level, unless they die. Actually, there is a death right there. So that helps in a sense, but it means we have to go back a room. So we're losing a decent amount of time on Metalhead, because if you die on the second phase, you have to go back to the first. But yeah, so Metalhead, as I said, is kind of the only real boss of the game. In order to kill Metalhead, you have to take out each of these pillars that charge it to give it energy. And they can only be taken out when they're not red and circled with electricity. Metalhead will do a little bit of the work for you because it throws enemies at you, and those enemies can take out the pillars too. So it's sort of fun as a casual strategy to get Metalhead to kill itself. It's a speedrun strategy, maybe not the most efficient use of your time.
There is a category called chargeless, where you can't do this charging attack that I'm doing now. And the only I missed a gem. I missed a gem. Real time update.
Goodness.
I missed a gem. That's bad.
And we missed a gem and left the level. So that's rough. This is another big difference between the Reignited and the original. In the original, we know that you're missing 5 gems. You may have some sense of where the 5 gems in the level are, but you don't know for sure which 5 gem we're missing, probably. In Reignited, by hitting a button, Sparks will just point you to the nearest gem that you haven't collected. It can sometimes be a little misleading because of things like walls, but in general, it's a lot easier. There it is. It's a lot easier to collect missing gems in Reignited. There are all 500. We are leaving the level now. That is a minute time loss between the death and the missing gem. So very much a race at this point.
Promise you it's not scripted.
I make no promises.
I will say I am a little bit surprised. I haven't seen you miss a gem in a while. I guess it's just the heat of competition.
Yeah, this was not a gem I would have expected to miss. It wasn't Sparksless at the time. It is a gem that takes a little while to appear. When you break that chest, when you break.
Oh, gotcha.
When you break that chest, it flies up in the air, and you have to wait for it to fall down. So I think I was a little bit too hasty.
Oh,
We're back. We're good.
No, I think it just sort of froze on the font screen there. Yeah, it's not cooperating. Oh, there it is. Okay.
This is one of the challenges of streaming from a Switch, extra technology that can break. DebianChan does pick up that last gem right before the balloonist. It is a bit annoying if the balloonist tries to talk to you before you collect it, because you have to say, no, I don't want to travel to the next world. And then you have to go a bit of a distance away before the balloonist will talk to you again. So good job getting that gem. It is harder than it looks. So we're about to see Dreamweavers. This is the 5th of the 6 worlds. This is the hardest. This is the weirdest. But we are getting on towards the end of this. So they are one world apart, but again, they have different requirements. So don't take that as a sign that one is ahead over the other. Once we leave Dreamweavers, we're going to have a pretty good sense of who's ahead, partly because DebianChan has to do all of Nasty's world, the 6th world. Has to collect every gem, which involves backtracking in one of the levels. Has to go do extra work after that for the 20% of the 120% requirement. And so if they're close, if they're really close heading into that last world, then you can safely say PraiseBigDog is ahead. I don't know who's ahead right now. It depends on how cleanly we get through Beastmasters and Dreamweavers, Beastmakers.
This is where this is also though where routing is going to make a difference. See, now I will fully admit I don't know any, like, maybe in the start of the game I'm somewhat familiar with the way people route things, but at this point I'm sort of going off, like, without any kind of script, whereas DebianChan has sort of a set route, and that is going to make a huge difference in terms of just time to complete. You know, even if we have the same amount of work left, I think he'll have that comes out to him having an advantage, because I'll sort of be figuring it out as I go, and also, of course, less practiced.
Yes, and you are close though. You're around 5,400, 5,500 gems at this point. Only need 6,000 just to get to the last world, so that may not come into play as much as you think. I do want to talk about what we just saw on DebianChan's side, though. We're in Haunted Towers, which is one of those levels that as a casual player, you probably didn't 100%. And that's because of this weird area off to the side that you have to make ample use of the supercharge to reach, and then get it. And DebianChan used a bit of a skip there by turning around on the supercharge and not having to go down the intended path. Didn't get it the first try, but that's okay. So DebianChan is up on this area with a bunch of these, again, large armored enemies that you need the super flame for. But one of the big differences with this super flame and the rest throughout the game is this one lasts until you leave the level or die. And that's big. So as a casual player, this is probably the last thing you do. You finally figure out how to get here. You do a little bit of cleanup getting the final gems, but you're pretty much done the level at this point. Speedrunners are going to rush that and keep that super flame throughout the entire level because it saves so much time. $54.79. We're probably 2 levels away from just being able to beeline to the final one.
Know exactly which two I'd like to try. The difficulty, well, maybe the benefit is, ouch. That's not good. That's not good. Oof. The difficulty, as I was saying, is going to be navigating to those levels.
Yes, and that death hurts. Again, all deaths in the Reignited trilogy, especially on Switch, have pretty long load times compared to the near instant respawn in the original. That one is doubly bad because we haven't touched a dragon recently, so it puts us back at the start of the world.
Snag this just in case.
Yes, that is the trade-off. You only need 40 dragons, but the world record for this gets 50. I don't imagine most of those are for safety, but we do see a lot more dragons than are needed in the world. All right, so picking up some more gems, we're sitting at about 5,500 here.
Not my favorite, but here we go. Light level.
All right, we are going to head into Wild Flight.
If I strictly need gems, there's only one thing I need to be doing.
Yep, it's possible to pick up another 300 here, which will mean that we don't have to worry about any of the weird skips. Wild Flight, we don't have to worry, in Treetops, we don't have to worry about the awful room with all the enemies in Misty Bog. We can just skip all those. 300 gems here means you need 133 and you're done.
Oh, goodness. What a start.
I will say I found this to be the hardest flight levels.
Yes.
On Reignited, especially.
Oh, I agree. Wild Flight, especially maybe if you don't try to get the cycle as fast, it might be easier. But if you want to do it fast, I think it is the hardest flight level.
I'm just going to go ahead and do this level very casually.
Sounds good. I remember being very frustrated by this one in my Reignited playthrough, and part of that is there's an achievement in this level on PlayStation, and that achievement is complete the level without touching the ground. And there are places here where you either really want to touch the ground, or
You might accidentally do it.
or you accidentally do it. And I think I needed 15 to 20 tries to get this. It was very frustrating. With that said, that is 60 gems picked up no matter what happens the rest of the way. So
Touch the ground.
that's good progress. We're going to be able to skip most of, probably half of this world as well. So DebianChan really has to push here.
I'm
We're on
feeling the
Dark
heat.
Passage. Dark Passage is a weird level. It's kind of a cool one. The idea is that these invincible enemies called fools, they have lanterns. And if you flame or charge them, they turn into a lantern. Otherwise, they turn them, most of them at least, turn them on and off on a cycle. And whether it's light or dark affects the enemy. They'll be smaller, and so generally easier to manage in the light than in the dark. Some of them are in fact invincible in the dark.
We were a little short of the full 300 there, so gonna have to do at least one more level here.
Yeah, 180 is still pretty good with where we're at. I would say that you are definitely in the lead at this point. You are at 5747 gems. It does so at this point you can pretty much choose any level you want in Beast Makers or Dreamweavers. So it is going to be your call how to proceed here. This is another on DebianChan's side, as we see. So getting swallowed by these enemies means you get chewed and spat out. It's a bit longer in terms of a damage animation than some of the others. It's not nearly as bad as the trees, though. And these devil-type enemies, remind me, they cannot be charged in the original game, right?
That's right.
But they can be in Reignited. They are classified as small enemies there, if I remember correctly. We're not going to see any of them, so figured I'd bring that up now.
Just go ahead. Oh, there it is. Huh. The sort of spinning gem thing killed one of the fodder for me. That was pretty convenient. Unintentional strats.
When DebianChan does that, the goal is to get that chest to kill the enemy that has that's charging the ground with electricity. I don't know if that's what it locks onto by default. I know in your case you had already killed it. You went around the other way. And there is, incidentally, an achievement in the PlayStation version of Reignited there for flaming all of those blue flowers around that backside of the pyramid temple thing. So that's kind of cool, but no gems back there for us. And we are getting pretty close. That is 295 gems here in the home world. Gonna run around, see if we can find a couple more, but now the question is, where are we headed?
Uh-oh.
There is the balloonist. DebianChan making some good progress through Dark Passage. I would say this is one of the harder levels to do fast for a variety of reasons. Between the cycles and just a couple of these rooms are challenging. But yep, makes that glide there. So looks like this is going to be a pretty clean level all around. Going to save a good amount of time here.
Yeah. Looking at my split, I might save upwards somewhere between 30 seconds and a minute this chest. There we go.
All right. The decision that PraiseBigDog has made is Metalhead for the final level before the last world. Lots of gems here. It is. I would argue that it's probably the easiest of the choices available, except maybe the home world for the 5th. But the portal was right there. It's a pretty safe choice. Do you have a sense of how many gems you need? Because I know you don't need to finish this level.
I don't, but just a quick chat with the balloonist made me realize I've miscalculated here. I actually need 50 total dragons, and I have only 45. So I'm going to have to seek out a couple more dragons, which will be which will sort of bring this race even closer.
This is not the level to do that in.
No, there's
only
just
one here. But one thing you can do now is make use of that guidebook feature that we talked about towards the start of this race, and go revisit a couple of those levels that it's dragons in.
That's true.
Though there aren't tons here. We're getting to the point where the number of dragons per level is decreasing, kind of as a difficulty and thematic decision. And there are 2 other levels here that you just completely haven't entered. I don't think we're going to have much trouble, but it is still a race. This is not over.
Not in the slightest. Especially when last time I was short 1 dragon, I made that run for what is affectionately called Guantanamo Bay, and I very much realized why it is called Guantanamo Bay. I think I had something like 9 or 10 tries just to get that one last dragon, but as it was the only dragon that I actively knew where it was, I was going for it.
You really were. It's a tricky one. It really is.
So we've hit our gem count. We just need 4 more dragons, which is a very familiar place to be, I think.
Especially headed into Misty Bog, where that last dragon could be your 50th, if that's how you choose to play it. But you have not touched treetops.
Treetops, yeah. I know there's at least 1 I can get, or 2 I can get in treetops pretty easily. So we'll see if I don't just sort of make a beeline for every dragon in this one, and then, well, as much of a beeline as these guys will let me. These are some of the tougher enemies, I think. Did I miss a guy already? No.
So one of the equalizers, though, is that both runners are going to have to go through the first 3 levels of the final world. In order to progress in that last world without making use of rat proxy, and definitely for 120%, you do have to go to the end portal of each level to unlock the next level. So there's plenty of time for this race to be decided still. As we see DebianChan finish Icy Flight, they've got 2 levels left in Dreamweavers.
And not making use of rat proxy is, of course, a choice that I am making, and not something based on my, lack of being professional at this.
Or the game you're playing not having it.
Yeah, that either.
Well, we are about to head into that awful room, maybe.
I think so. I think it's a dragon that I know where it is, so I'm gonna have to do it. Ow. Keep going. All right.
You make it?
Luckily, this is the benefit of any percent. As long as I can get past them, I am done with that.
There's Damon. So that's 48.
Nice. Good job.
There are more dragons in this level. We didn't pick up the dragon in Metalhead, and we haven't touched treetops, so there are choices still to be made. As we see DebianChan in Lofty Castle. This is one of the levels that has really cool movement technique with Supercharge. We're not really going to see that because it's crazy. There's a strategy where you can gain some height by being caught by an enemy as you jump. We're also not going to see that, but that's okay. Just getting through this level without deaths is going to be a win here if we can do that.
Absolutely.
What? That guy followed me so far. Goodness.
Oh, that's a death. That's not a bad death.
Yeah. I was just shocked by the fact that the enemy was able to do the same platforming that was really, if you could have seen my hands.
Oh yeah, I just caught that on the instant replay. That one was rough.
Oh, ow. Alright.
Yep,
I
that's
think
not
it's
bad.
this hog here who followed me up somehow.
Yep, and those are not purgeable, even though the bulls in the first world were, that looked
There it
pretty similar.
I think that's 50.
That is dragon number 50. DebianChan's at 70. So
There you go, Bubba.
good progress. Now the questions are going to be, you really haven't run any of these remaining levels, right?
Nope, I have not touched them since I first got Spyro Reginited trilogy, and then prior to that, maybe better part of a decade and a half before that.
So I know in the previous race you did make it to the balloonist in the fifth world. Maybe you still remember where that is. But you are going to have to go through that and figure out the routes through 3 of the 4 levels in the final world. So it's not over, but I would say PraiseBigDog is ahead.
I agree. And remember, I have a whole nother level that Praise doesn't need to do.
Plus, spoiler, we also are going to have 3 minutes and 15 seconds of credits.
Oh, that's true.
On DebianChan's side, unless there is a strategy to skip them that you would see in like top world record runs, but DebianChan generally skips that skip, if you will, and so that is another 3 minutes and 15 seconds between killing the final boss and being able to get to that bonus level that we won't have to worry about on PraiseBigDog's side.
I think it's an incredible choice to do the credit skip very, very high level. It shows a high level of confidence in your time, and it shows a great deal of respect for the people who work so hard to get us this game.
Indeed. Otherwise we wouldn't know about Ted Price, right?
I was gonna say, who could forget our champion Ted Price? All right, now the difficulty is, where is that balloonist?
Exactly.
And how do I get to him?
You'll get no help from me on this. I want to keep it close to make it exciting.
That's fair. And I'm still collecting things just out of habit. I really should just be looking for this balloonist. This way? Nope, this guy's big.
Right.
DebianChan is pretty close to Dun Lofty Castle. This is probably the last dangerous room here. When you're going fast, it is very easy to fall off.
Oh, wow.
We do avoid that here, but that has been the cause of some recent deaths. But we're pretty close to finishing this off now.
Where am I going?
Okay, I'll get him later.
Usually you can see the balloonist from the start, even.
Yeah, that is so the original game was made by Insomniac. And they also made the Ratchet and Clank games, and both of these games, Spyro and Ratchet and Clank, show a tendency for the levels to be circular. So you can see the end from the beginning in a lot of them, you just can't get there without going through the whole loop. That's true in Magic Crafters, especially here. When you land, you see the balloonist at the end of the level, but you can't just glide over there. This one is a bit different. That is not the case in this fifth world.
Oh, I see him. Gotta figure out how to get there. And just get the checkpoint for safety in case it's really hard to get there. Please blast me. Bam, alright.
Hey, we're in the same place. You just got the teeth.
Picking up the same dragon seconds apart, but DebianChan has to do Jacques still the boss of this world. And PraiseBigDog is now running past Jacques. And there's the balloonist.
Oh, whoops.
Whew.
Okay. Bam. Alright.
We did choose to stay here, but
I just wanted to think about it a little bit longer. He told me Nasty's World is a pretty scary place, so I needed to take a moment to consider what I was undertaking.
that is a nice gold lofty castle, by the way, DebianChan.
Thank you.
Congrats.
Yeah. That one felt pretty good. Oh, missed fest. Missed fast.
Yes, this is another one that casually you may have struggled with a little bit. There's this giant spinning pillar that we see here, and the top runners are able to just glide onto it anyway because they're that good. But the intended strategy is to find one of these fools that's off screen and figure out that it lowers that pillar for a bit, and then flamer charge that fool and race over there to be able to get to it before it goes back up again.
I'm having a lot of trouble with these fools today. There we go.
All right, we're on to North Cove.
Whew.
It took me a second to even find the entrance to North Cove, just so that we all know, sort of have some kind of range for how unfamiliar I am with what's happening here. I was wondering why the large dragon-shaped mouths weren't opening, and I was like, do I have to go through it level exit? What's happening?
Yeah, and that is something that goes on in this world. You do have to go through the level exit of each level to unlock the next one. But that first level does open for free, so no worries there. Just reflectively picking up gems. We don't
Yeah.
need more here.
It's
It's all about finding that level exit without too many deaths. Thematically speaking, there are very few dragons here in this final world. There are 2 in the 2 levels, none in the 3rd and 4th. That means fewer checkpoints. Deaths become more costly. Also, just sort of as a fun fact, the dragons in this world are ones that you've already freed from the 1st through 5th. One of them even mentions that, thanks for freeing me, but I gotta go. And it's because he's rushing off here to try and stop Nasty, and he fails. And these dragons here all get frozen a second time. Spyro refers to this by saying, hey, didn't I free you before? To the first dragon in the whole world. But we're skipping all of that glorious dialogue in the name of saving the frames.
That's fantastic story, though. I was not personally aware of that, even as a kid. Sort of maybe didn't piece that together while playing through, even though I was listening to the dialogue, hoping for some hints or something.
And part of that is the dragons all look slightly different in their first and second freeing in the original game. I think most people chalk that up to just mistake, but they are identical in the Reignited trilogy.
I don't need that.
That is some awesome lore.
Right? Well, I'm still sort of thinking about how you told me, DebianChan, on one of your semi-recent streams at least, that there's the lore that nobody really knows where Spyro came from.
Yeah, so this is nowhere in the North American, come on, get it, in the North American version, but on the Japanese Wikipedia page for Spyro, which was released in Japan, although a quite neutered version, if you will. It plays very, very differently from this Spyro and the one that was released in Europe. It talks about the lore of Spyro, and apparently he's like several thousand years old, and no one knows where he comes from. It's a very interesting read through Google Translate if you need it.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh, there's a death.
Whew, making up some time,
Not
but
the most costly death because there's a dragon pretty close by. I don't know if you picked it up though.
I'm not sure if I did.
But we're now at the point where every second counts as DebianChan enters Nasty's world, and we're a minute away from the runners being on the same world.
Okay, we're gonna try something here.
oh,
Nice.
I like that. Oh, that's the sort of thing I want to hear. I wonder if this will work.
Yeah, I will say. Well, I'll wait for getting through this. Okay. It is possible to just skip all that and damage boost out to the exit portal in any percent.
Even in SRT. Oh,
Wow.
cool.
It's close, but yeah, it is possible to just get out there by taking you have like 3 damage boosts to do it. So
I guess the first time around I probably didn't have the full gold sparks, but the second time around I might have been able to get that done.
Yeah, you also have to know that it's a possibility. All right, we're off to Twilight Harbor. So it is close, but PraiseBigDog is decidedly in the lead.
Oh goodness, you I just sort of peeked on my own stream to see where DebianChan is, and he is really closing the gap. My goodness.
If it were not for the credits, I would say that this is really close. With the credits, I think that it is definitely in PraiseBigDog's favor right now. But this level is not easy, especially in Reignited.
After the fact, we might want to just sort of see what the times look like if we balance for credits or lack of credits.
All right, yeah, credits are about 3 minutes and 15 seconds. I'm curious. So this level that you're in, to full clear, requires either a lot of backtracking or multiple deaths. You don't have to do that. You're just going to run through the level and not worry about a bunch of the gems.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I would say I'm about 2 levels behind, roughly. That's because I have to full clear Newark Cove, which takes a while. It's one of the longer levels in terms of time, and I have to full clear 2 other worlds that PraiseBigDog does not need to.
Yeah. We see taking that dragon for safety.
Yep. I will say every dragon I come across I am taking unnecessarily perhaps, but just in case, because these levels are getting hard.
Yeah, this closing sequence here is one that I died on several times in my Reignited playthrough.
Oh no.
Oh, you're already there. Wow.
Charge jumping. I'm abusing the charge jump, which again is one of the main differences in movement.
Yeah, so PraiseBigDog was able to get a large chunk of this level by virtue of playing any percent and not needing to go and backtrack and take the supercharge all over the place, and that's going to save a lot of time. We are now headed into the final boss.
Where is that? And
Right next to the other one.
I got lost in a place where there are but 2 exits. Now, which of you is Dorito? I wonder. There it is.
Let's see. Dorito is the one closest to Newark Cove. There's names for the other ones. I'm not up on the lore, but there are 3 rats in Newark Nexus there.
Yeah, I had to chase them around because I wanted a full sparks going into Nasty North.
Good idea.
Oh goodness, I just remembered there's the thieves I have to chase around. Those always take me forever, and I don't even know the paths on these guys.
Yeah, and again, the thieves are, I would argue, harder and Reignited. They accelerate faster. It's not over, but a solid final level, and it will be. Here we see one of the differences between Reignited and the original. So Nasty Nork, the final boss and the villain of the game, is standing up on that ledge, and he's shooting green energy. In the original game, he'll only do that when the camera's on him. In Reignited, he'll just do it whenever. So no standing still in this level. There's a key. So 1 cycle on that thief. So that's pretty clean. We're on to the second. And we're headed into Twilight Harbor. So they are 1 level apart, but
this second thief is much harder.
That was nearly a death there, but it was saved. We are going to have to do another loop, though.
Oh no, I thought I had him. Come on. It's so hard to tell. I guess one thing is that my my screen also is a little bit is a little bit dark. So on that run there, I wasn't totally sure where the ground was. Sort of technological challenge. Again, the challenges of doing it on a Switch.
There's the Switch, and then I have found that just some of the improvements made to the graphics actually make the game a bit harder because of lack of contrast. Everything is simple and bright in the original, but when you add things like actual blades of grass, gems are harder to find. Thieves will blend in with the environment more. But we are chasing Nasty, so this is the first step of 2 in this boss fight. And we do make it. That is not trivial to get a 1 cycle on that first phase in Reignited.
Oh, wow. Good job.
I think if I'd known it was not trivial, I might have failed.
I mean, you don't need all the gems, which helps a lot, but it is a little bit harder in Reignited. And here we are, we got through, and there it is, GG.
Do I stop timing?
GG.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Time stops when you hit Nasty.
Okay.
So that's a 1:55:03.
Nice.
I know you stopped the timer at 1:55:10, but that is a solid run, especially given that this is your first time playing through some of the end of that.
My first full run.
GG, man. That's great.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
DebianChan is close to the end of Twilight Harbor. A PB is still possible, if maybe not the most likely at this point. We're only 39 seconds off pace. And we did have a gold North Cove after a gold Lofty Castle and a gold Jock. So we've made up a bunch of time in the past few levels. So took that challenge seriously. So here we see a couple depth warps. So we have to backtrack a couple different ways to get up to the top, which we saw just a moment ago, and now supercharging into that otherwise invisible chest. And we take a death after each of them to go back to the dragon by the supercharge. Saves a bit of time. Generally, we route 2 lives into our expectations for that to save the time so that we don't game over.
There are, in fact, a lot of lives here too. So if you don't do your best, that is rough. If you don't do your best routing here, it's not disastrous. You can reclaim the lives by picking them up in this level.
And we have more Sparksless action here. We will get through all the enemies, but it will make picking up these final gems a bit of a pain.
I'm just over here sort of fiddling with my my layout so I can make your stream a little bit larger. My goodness, the pressure was on though. I will say my palms are a little bit sweaty. I've sort of paused here to just show the guidebook. I only got through 65% of the game, and it did take me not a huge amount of time less than you are here at the end doing the 120% run. Again, I think part of my idea of what this would look like when we originally sort of devised this was this is going to be a great way to show the difference in skill, strategy, the 2 different games, load times, all these different factors, and just also highlight how impressed I am with this friend of mine who is doing these very powerful speedruns. Maybe, I think you're modest and not, gonna brag for yourself, but I am blown away that I managed to do an any percent run just hardly faster than you're doing the whole game.
Well, thanks. That's really nice of you, man.
Quick kill on that second
Yeah.
seat. Probably worth noting one extra thing we can see in that guidebook beyond the game total percent is that in-game time of 1 hour, 20 minutes, and 38 seconds. So that's nearly 35 minutes of load time. Now, there is definitely some load time included in the 120% the original game run. So it's not like subtract 35 minutes from that and you see the difference. But just between the Switch and the extra death times and all that, it's a huge amount of time that it gets artificially added in the Reignited trilogy.
I'm not going to make a first cycle Nork here. Missing that spring chest is just all it takes to miss. In fact, you were saying before getting first cycle on this guy is even harder in Reignited. If I remember right, in the 120 route, you actually have to backtrack to get all the gems. It's faster to get this first cycle Nork and then glide over back here and get the spring chest. That's how tight it is in Reignited.
Yeah, it's rough. I mean, so because PraiseBigDog had no obligation to pick up the gems along this path, that helped a lot, to be fair. But it is a lot tighter. Nasty Nork will stop on that platform for less time in Reignited. All right, so there's 25. We're going to head through this final platform area. We're going to do credit skip by flaming Nasty Nork instead of proxying off of his head and going up through the ceiling and ending up and then flaming him as we fall to our death, which skips the credits because we die, but it's much harder. So that finishes the level. That's a pretty good time for getting to this point, sub 2 hours, which is not something that we were doing even a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
But now we've got about 3 minutes and 15 seconds of credits. So is there anything that both of our runners who have graced us with a great race and a lot of technique, anything that you guys would like to say?
All I want to say is GG, man. That's great. I mean, especially compared to the last race, this was tight. This was an actual race.
Yeah, actually, I would firmly agree, and definitely GG. I think if we had waited maybe another couple weeks to do this, the margins are going to be even thinner. To anybody sort of watching the VOD or watching this now on my channel, I cannot recommend enough watching DebianChan's streams, because it's an interesting combination of some high level play, but some very sort of like fun and chill vibes. Plenty of sort of like self-effacing humor, which I think is some of the draw of my own stream. So there's definitely something sort of some holdover there if you're looking for some relationship between our content. Of course, there's also these races and whatnot. As far as commenting on the race itself, I want to very much say that I think a huge part of the saving of time here was the slight egging on of, hey, like, these flight levels are a pretty smart strategic move, where as a kid I was terrible at them, and so even now I don't really love to do them, but getting those in just sort of gave me all the freedom in the world to, in the beast makers, just sort of have the freedom to choose what levels I wanted to go into, seek out the dragons, and just move right along.
Absolutely, that was a good decision on your part.
Yeah, but I think what was really impressive to me is the golden splits you just sort of happened to casually throw out in what is otherwise sort of a goofy setup we have here. This very not sort of official category race, just sort of something between friends. You still really brought the heat. I cannot stress enough. My palms were shaking, my hands were a little bit shaky, or my palms were sweaty, my hands were a little bit shaky. Definitely a thrilling race, at least to be a part of, if not to watch.
Yeah, I hope everyone liked it. We're coming up here on Nasty's Loot and the next credit screen, but I want to encourage anyone who's watching me. You can see that PraiseBigDog has a follower account, and he just needs 4 until he gets affiliate. So if you want to head over to his stream and give him a follow, I think he'd appreciate that a lot. He's a great guy.
Yeah, thank you. And while Debian doesn't have a follower sort of like goal or anything like that, I think the appeal is not in helping reach a follower goal. It's just, hey, that's some good content I would recommend. And I also, before we get too far into thank yous and back to like commentary on Nasty's Loot here, I want to also thank Uroogla, who has been a wonderful commentator for us.
Absolutely. Thank you, Uroogla.
I'm glad to help. I had a lot of fun. And I'm happy to do this whenever. It's a great way to showcase the different games, different runners, and the different techniques, and show that you don't need to have run a game 10,000 times to have fun and make improvements.
For sure. Very much so.
We're heading to Nasty's loot now, so this is a level that you only do in 120%. It's kind of a victory lap, if you will. Lots of these yellow gems worth 10 and purple worth 25 scattered all around. There are a couple challenging points. DebianChan's put a lot of time into practicing this level. So what we're going to be doing is, this is kind of a flight level. It's not the same as those in the first 5 worlds that we saw, but Spyro is able to fly instead of just glide around. But the height that Spyro can reach is dependent on how far into the level he gets. So there are these thieves throughout that have keys. Using the keys on doors will let you get slightly higher, and if you glide from that higher vantage point, your max height increases. So you have to progressively get these keys by killing these thieves in order to glide high enough to reach the end of the level. These last couple, as we just saw, are in these planes. Missing the quick kill on this first one, but should be able to get a pretty quick follow-up there.
One thing that we haven't yet said, but I know and was trying to make use of on my flight levels, was that the closer you are to the ground, the faster Spyro flies. I don't know if that's true here, but I just wanted to mention it because I saw sort of after you missed that thief, you went to attack him from below, and I think that may be the reason why.
That's definitely true in the original. We do miss the quick kill here on the second thief. We're going to have to cycle around and come back. I think it's a bit different in the Reignited trilogy. I found that I gained speed as I dropped rather than simply from being low in Reignited.
So, I am now sparksless.
And that's going to be a big problem for a couple reasons. There's no fodder here to heal up. And the final level the final room that we're going to be getting to very soon is just a bunch of those firework chests that you really want to charge into. You're not going to be able to do that without sparks, and you have to be careful to pick up every single gem manually. So that's going to be a big time loss here, but we're still going to be able to see some cool movement to go that up. And we're headed to the finale. We can see 3 of these red rockets here. They're going to be used to blow up these invincible chests. A bit of trouble picking up the gems as you'd expect without sparks. And then we're going to head into the final room. And although we don't see this in the original, that room in the Reignited trilogy is where everything began. It's where Nasty was in the opening cutscene that we, of course, skipped. All right, here we go. And so by flaming one of these chests, it's going to explode, blowing up all the others. We do have to stay away because the explosion can hurt Spyro. And the last thing we want to do in a level with no checkpoints is take a death. We'd have to go through all of the thieves again. The same is true if we miss a gem, though. So we have to be very careful on that as well.
Okay, got him all. I just wanted to make sure.
There we go. And so that's going to be GG's as soon as we step into the portal.
Bam.
GG. So a 2:07:14, it's not a PB, but that is what, your second best run ever?
I think the one I did earlier today might have been
Wow.
a little bit better, but yeah, this is one of the best, definitely.
Well, there we go. It's the heat of competition really brought it out.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I appreciate that you did not at all, knowing that I had not even completed the game in recent memory, you did not take it easy.
Well, of course.
My goodness.
I would like to congratulate both the runners. It was an exciting race. As expected, it was not really possible to tell who was in the lead until leaving the 5th world. But we saw some great gameplay from both sides, some rerouting on the fly in both cases, and we ended up with some great times.
Yeah, for sure.
Congratulations to our runners. Anything that you all want to say to close out?
Congrats, PBD. Subscribe to PBD. I want to say, I want a rematch.
Oh yeah, I think we're 1-1 at this point.
Yeah, and maybe we can include Uroogla in the next run too.
Oh, maybe for some pacing as a pace setter.
Absolutely. Or I can run Reignited as well. I can try to set that up. And
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe we could. We'll have to brainstorm it out. But there's definitely got to be a third one coming for this.
Of course.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right.
For sure. Thanks.
Thank you, Praise. Thank you, Uroogla.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to all the viewers on both channels. Thanks to Uroogla. Thanks to DebianChan for entertaining this rather unorthodox idea. And thanks to Mr. Price for bringing us the greatness that is Spyro, really.
Absolutely. Really, without him, none of this stream would have been possible.
For sure.
All right.
Actually, yeah. Sorry, just had an idle idea. I'm like, actually, I have no idea where probably on the lower part, obviously, but I wonder where this time lands on the record boards of mine.
Oh, that's a good idea. You should check against the in-game time, 1:20:38.
Let's see. Okay. Well, I'm gonna cut stream here. Thanks to everybody who showed up. Thanks to anybody who's watching the VOD. Thanks to people who will have to review this video if I submit it for speedrun.com or whatever. And thank you to our participants once more. That's DebianChan and Uroogla commentating. So that's it for now. It's tough to say when I'll next stream because I'm like sort of starting a new job and moving and whatnot, but one of those next streams is likely to be a race quite like this. So keep an eye out.